Good morning. I know this is a very early morning for many of you in the US. It's the middle of the night for some of you. And for some of you who are in other countries, it's the start of your morning. And I was thinking about something, so I said, let me hop on this live, do a quick live. But what if the speed of which everything that you wanted to accomplish was contingent on how quickly you were willing to act and be committed to growth? Now, I know that there's a lot of things that we all can say that we've accomplished in our lifetime, a lot of things that we can say that we've accomplished. And if we really reflect back on the growth that we have had over the last decade, we can see that we're really not the person who we were 10 years ago. And when you continue to reflect on the things that you've done, a lot of the things that you've accomplished are because of growth. Now, everything that we do is by the grace of God and by God's grace and to the glory of God, when we have successes. But there's growth that's required in that. And, oftentimes, there's personal growth, there's professional growth, there's different types of growth. We even have spiritual growth and maturity in our lives. We advance academically. And, there's both formal and informal education. And I believe that we really should be committed to growth. And I think that when we think on all the things that we've accomplished, we can think about people who God has placed in our lives who have been helpful, they've been instrumental in our growth. And, I want to have this conversation because I've had some discussions with a lot of people over the last couple of weeks, and even in the last 24 hours, I've spoken with some students who have aspirations. They have career aspirations, they have aspirations in life. And I think about when I was in the position that they're in, preparing to graduate. And I know I did it a little bit differently with my Air Force career. And I know all of you have a different experience and you have different approaches that you've used in life. But I just want to encourage anyone who is watching this to think about the experiences and the accomplishments that you've had, and think about how much time you could have saved if you had someone mentoring you or coaching you. And think about what you've learned, what you've gained, and how you can actually help someone else. And I see I have a comment. So hello and greetings to you. I don't know where you're watching from, but thank you so much for commenting. But think about what you could have achieved had you known what you learned prior to whatever it was that you accomplished, and what you've gained that you could share with someone else, and how you can help someone else to grow. And I really believe that we have to be intentional about our growth, so that we're growing in every area of our life, and we're growing purposefully, right? We're growing in and on purpose. And, that is critical. And I think we can accelerate what we're doing. I'm going to put that question back up. And because of the time, I know people who are on Eastern time, it's just 3:39 a.m. And if you're on Central, it's 2:39 a.m. And my mountain friends, it's 1:39 a.m. And, my friends who are in the Pacific, it's, almost 1 a.m. And, for people who are in other countries, like I said, it's the start of your morning. But I want you, when you watch this, if you're not seeing it live, I want you to think about what you could actually, share, what you could actually give back to other people. But I also want to challenge you in your own growth and your own personal development, because we're continuing to develop, we're continuing to become. I think about last year in August, my dear friend Patrina invited me and several other remarkable women to speak at a conference that she hosted and she was also one of the speakers. It was called Emerge. And for us to emerge and become the person who we are to be, whoever's watching, men, whatever destiny and dream that God has placed inside of you that you have burning in your heart, it's possible. Women, whatever you have that you're dreaming about, the desires of your heart, it is possible. Oftentimes that is accelerated by how quickly we are willing to say yes, how quickly we're willing to grow, how quickly we're willing to become. And there's things that you're going to do that you may not have the full complete picture. I do encourage you, to talk to people and identify mentors and look at what you can do to grow and close the gap, but you're not going to know everything that you need to know before you do something. Yes, wisdom is finding out as much as you can, but oftentimes you're going to have to move forward and take steps, even in the absence of knowing everything. And I just encourage you to find people who you can mentor, who you can save time for, who you can invest in and help them instead of them taking years to accomplish what it's taken years for you to accomplish. If you can mentor someone who needs the support and who needs the assistance to help them so that they can only take days and months because of the wisdom that you're sharing with them to shave off time, time that would have taken them years. If you can shave off some of that time, that would be so helpful and so beneficial. I think that there are so many solutions that we can bring to the world by bringing our gifts, by bringing our talents to ensure that we can help. And I don't want you to think anything that you know is insignificant, because what might for you seem simple might be something that seems to be a complex, challenge, a complex feat for others. And you can break down, the steps and the principles to someone else and allow them to really accelerate not only their growth, but accelerate their success if you can reduce the time. There's so many books that are out there that can help us and give us step by step approaches to achieving what we're wanting to achieve. There's YouTube videos that you can watch that can help you to achieve. There's LinkedIn Learning that you can watch to help you to achieve some of the things that you would like to achieve. And I believe that that's very important. I think about when I was in the Presidential Management Fellows Program from 2014 to 2016. And when I started the Presidential Management Fellows Program, I spoke with other individuals, professionals who at the time were SESs, GS15s, who had gone through the Presidential Management Fellows Program, who gave me specific steps. They gave me rotations that I could do. They gave me people to talk to, and they saved so much time for me of having to do a trial and error. And I know that there's countless ways that you can save time for other individuals. I think about wisdom that I've gained from so many people on, how to accomplish certain things that have really saved, time for me. I remember when I was getting ready to start the talk show and podcast, I knew nothing about starting a talk show or a podcast. And I'm grateful that I received an email. God allowed an email to come from the Daily Gospel Network. And that email prompted me to register for a challenge. And I'm so grateful for Mr. George and the insight that he provided. He shared the type of equipment that you could use. He shared some possible platforms that you could use. And I just am grateful. I'm so grateful for him. And, I can think about so many people who I'm grateful that God has placed in my life. He's placed in my path. I think about Miss Tanya Bonner, who, was a mentor for me for so many years, and, gave me some wisdom and some insight, as I progressed in my career. I think about so many people who were so helpful and who were so instrumental that God placed in my life. And I would just encourage you that if there's something that you're dreaming about, don't delay in doing it. Don't think that just because you don't have all the expertise or you don't have all the knowledge, that it's something that's not possible. It's possible. And I would just encourage you to gain the insight that you can gain, but do things to be intentional about your growth every day, to accelerate your growth. And I'm receiving a notification that there are some people who can't post comments from where they're joining from geographically. So if that's you and you're wanting to post a comment and you can't post, feel free to send me a message. Feel free to inbox me. But I encourage you, if you're watching this live stream or if you're watching the video after the stream ends, that you type in the chat just some things that you've learned that might be useful to someone else, and how, some things that have worked for you and how they can be helpful and beneficial to others. But I do encourage you just to be intentional. Be intentional about your growth. Be intentional about moving forward with the things that you're dreaming about, because there's so many different things that you can do if you're just willing to make the commitment to go for it, even in the absence of all of the information. But be willing to grow, be willing to learn, and be willing to be intentional about your growth, to become the person who you are to become. It's a commitment. It's a commitment of growth, a commitment of learning. And I encourage you to pray daily and ask God how you can accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. There's an idea that I woke up with, and I don't have, all of the insight on how to do it, but I'm going to actually start today. I've even sent a message to a couple people about, meeting to have a discussion, but it's a solution that people need. And so I encourage you, even if you don't have the full big picture, go ahead and move forward on what you have. And as you go, there's a lot of insight and information that you can gain, but also seek mentors and coaches to help you with that. And for what you've learned and for what you've gained, pour back into other people. Use what you have to bring solutions in your community, solutions in your state, in your country, around the world, that's going to help people to grow. But be intentional about growing in purpose and on purpose, and be intentional and be willing to share your gifts, share your talents, share the solutions that you have with others. And before we conclude, these are the things that I want you to be intentional about reflecting on, the things that I want you to be intentional about sharing and revealing. So if you don't mind typing in the comments or in the chat if you're live, just think about some powerful lessons that you've learned over the last decade, over the last 2 decades, over the last 10 or 20 years, maybe even the last 5 years. Think about those powerful lessons and put one or two powerful lessons that you've learned in the chat. One of the lessons that I've learned is that you don't have to always have everything figured out to move forward to do something. As long as you're committed, I believe that God puts the people, He puts the resources, He puts it in your path. I talked a little bit earlier about, before I started the Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson talk show and podcast, I didn't know the first thing about starting a podcast, but God put that desire in my heart, and I said yes. And when I just made the decision that I was going to do it, the next day, I received an email from the Daily Gospel Network about a challenge that they had of starting a talk show, right? I think about an idea that I had about a certain book, and I was talking to one of my friends, Dr. Neil Hambright. He had the very same idea. So we collaborated and we partnered and we co authored The Autonomous Career Freedom of Time and Space in Your Chosen Workplace together. The other thing that I want to challenge you to do is to reveal how mentorship has helped to accelerate your success and how that's helped to accelerate your success, not just for you, but for others. And as you're reflecting on that and you're revealing that in the chat, that you're also finding other people who you can mentor, and that you're also finding other people and professionals and leaders who can mentor you as well. We all have leadership on the inside of us, and it's really about tapping into the gifts, the talents, the purpose for our lives. You know, I think about the scripture that says in Proverbs, many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that will prevail. And so sometimes we're trying to do things and we're not successful because it's not aligned with our purpose. But sometimes we're not successful because we need more insight, we need more wisdom, and mentorship can help you with that. And then the other thing that I want to encourage you, two other things that I want to encourage you to share is I want you to share some of the proven strategies that have helped you to stay positioned for purposeful growth. You know, I think every day we can be committed to our growth. I think about one of the prior guests that I had on the Purpose Today with Dr. April Dobson podcast was Chief Charles Boating and Kankum Boating. And, you know, he shared that there's so many lessons that we can have from nails. No matter what you do, your nails, unless you have like some type of condition, your nails are going to organically grow. We can cut them and they're going to grow back. And so it's going to happen. And so there's a lot of growth that we have that you see, some of the growth that is not as visible, but you have growth. And I encourage you to be intentional about your growth and also be intentional about helping others, you know, to grow. So do something daily to grow. Read a book, read articles, watch videos that are informative and insightful on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on other platforms. And then the last thing that I want to encourage you to do is to, and I've said this before, but I want to reiterate it. I want to encourage you to share your unique gifts, your unique talents, the unique solutions that you have. Share it around the world. We now, with technology, with this digital age, have the ability to post things online. We can post on different social media platforms, and people around the world can gain insight from what you're posting. And so I encourage you, if you have some knowledge that you've gained, some growth that you've gained, even elevate it beyond the posting. Elevate it to writing a book. Consider writing a book. Consider publishing articles so that you can use the successes, the wisdom that you've gained, the lessons that you've learned from those, you know, experiences and those successes with people who need it. So I know that it's very unorthodox for me to have a live around 3 a.m. just before 4 a.m. Eastern time on a Saturday of all days. But this was just really on my heart, and I hope that it's encouraged you. And I see that Bradley has typed that this has really challenged you to reflect on your last 10 years. You are very welcome, Bradley. Thank you so much for putting that. I see Branson has a question. How do you stay focused on YouTube? How do you stay focused with so many distractions? Well, Branson, I think that is a really good question because there's so many different things that are competing for our time. They're competing for our interest. But I think you have to take time daily to sit down daily and really have a to-do list for that day. Have a priority list for that day. Reflect on each day, what is my purpose? What are the problems that I want to solve? And what do I need to do so that I can do that in the ways that I can do that today? And I think you should also be planning for your week, for your month, for your year, and putting things on your calendar so that you can remain intentional and purposeful about what you're doing. And then I also think that in your daily reflection, it's important to ask yourself, what did I do today that was aligned, and what did I do that wasn't aligned? And also, when you receive invitations to collaborate, when you receive invitations to participate in certain meetings and certain events, ask yourself, how does this align with my purpose? How does this align with the types of problems that I want to solve? How does this align with my mission in the role that I'm in? And really question if that is a meeting or an invitation that you need to accept, or if you need to forward that opportunity to someone else. Sometimes we say yes to things that really are not aligned for us. Or so that would be the thing. If it aligns with purpose, if it aligns with the mission and the role that you're in, if it aligns with the types of solutions and problems that you want to solve, then the answer is yes. It's just you have to figure out the timing of when it's yes. Is this something that you need to schedule for today, or is it something that you need to schedule for next month or next week, right? So those are the things that you need to think about. Excellent question, Bradley. Thank you for asking it. And Bradley, I think that also answered the question about the action that you should take this week. It's planning. It's planning your schedule. It's planning your priorities based on your purpose, based on the problems that you want to solve, and based on the mission and the objectives of the role that you're in or the business that you lead. So great question. Branson, I see your question is how do I answered your question, Branson, on how to stay focused with distractions. Bradley, I answered your questions about the one action to take this week. Mike, great question. What's the biggest lesson from your last decade? I think that my biggest lesson from my last decade, and I say this, and let me give you a little bit of framing. So my last decade would be 2016, to now. My biggest lesson is to ensure that you make purposeful actions and planning towards purpose. And I say that because, and I appreciate you asking this question. I say that because in 2022, in April of 2022, and a lot of people aren't aware of this, but in April of 2022, I stopped breathing. And my son called 911 and then he prayed. And so by the time that the paramedics arrived, I had a very faint pulse. I didn't discover until this past Thanksgiving, November of 2025, from a conversation with my son and with my friends. We were all together at Thanksgiving. I didn't discover until a conversation with him that I stopped breathing for 4 minutes and 30 something seconds, right? And I had so much more purpose to accomplish, and I am grateful for my life. I'm grateful. I'm here by the grace of God. I say that knowing that I'm here by the grace of God. And, there are people today who didn't wake up. There are people who aren't living today. They didn't have another opportunity at life, right? And so in the last decade, my biggest lesson is ensuring that not only am I fulfilling purpose in my life, but that I'm intentional about fulfilling purpose and having activities that align with purpose, that I'm doing things that align with purpose, that I'm helping people to achieve the purpose, the desires that they have, and that I'm being intentional. That is the biggest takeaway that I can have. And I want to say from 2014 to 2016, I was a presidential management fellow at the Social Security Administration. And during that time, going into the program, I had 5 different offers, 5 different job offers. And I took the one that was going to be best aligned with my purpose and that was going to be best for my family, right? At the time, my son was in middle school, going into junior high, and I wanted to ensure that I would be able to, and I was also in a doctoral program at that time. And so I wanted to be intentional about still being a great mom for him and being able to show up for him and being the mom that I needed to be, while also aligning with my purpose, while also being able to effectively complete my doctoral program and being able to be successful in the presidential management program. So the greatest lesson is being intentional about being purpose aligned and really helping others and inspiring others to also have a purpose aligned life and career. So excellent question, Mike. Thank you for that. I know it was a long answer, but I wanted to make sure that I fully answered it and really gave, the insight around why that was my answer. John, great question. How you stay committed when results are slow. The way that you stay committed when results are slow is not focusing on the speed of the results, but focusing on the importance of what you're doing and focusing on how it aligns with purpose and thinking about the impact that it can make in other people's lives. Now, I want to also encourage you to really frame it, right, with the fact that you're having progress. Even if the result is slow, any progress that you're making is key. I think about a couple of things, right? I think about construction, right? I could probably, look at real estate every day and be okay with it because of the development that you see, right? If you think about a construction project, every construction project is different, but you don't have a home traditionally built in one day, right? There's a process, there's planning that goes into it first. There's excavation that has to be done. The land has to be leveled. The land has to be prepared with like plumbing, and there's things that have to be done. A foundation has to be laid, right? There's so many things that have to be done even before you start building. And then once the land is cleared and the land is prepared, in many places you test soil, you do all of these things, right? And then you lay a foundation. And after the foundation is laid, time has to occur for that cement to sit there, right? I'm not a developer. I'm not a builder, but I at least I've gone through the process of building a home on multiple times. So there's this process, right? So you wouldn't tell the builder or the developer, well, stop building, this house isn't finished fast enough, right? Because you know that it's a process. So even when the results are slow, focus on the purpose, focus on the solutions that it's going to bring, so focus on the problems that it's going to solve, and focus on the fact that you've made progress. That is how you stay committed, going back to your why, going back to the purpose that's going to help you stay committed even when things seem slow. On YouTube, there's a question from Olivia. How do you know when it's time to level up? Well, Olivia, I'm going to tell you, if you feel that you need to level up, then it's time. There's a desire that's in you. If you see that you're not continuing to show growth where you are, it's time to level up. If you have an idea or a desire that you haven't acted on, you know it's time to level up. These are all indicators that it's time to level up. You should have mentors and coaches who are encouraging you, who are pushing you. You should have people in your life who are challenging you to say, Olivia, I see you've been doing this, you've been successful, but I think there's more that you can do. That is how you know. Just the desire alone is a way to know that it's time to level up. Having something that you're desiring to do that you haven't achieved is letting you know it's time to level up. So those are just some ways. But in everything that we do, I believe that it's important to, to pray, to meditate, to be intentional about everything that we do. Proverbs 3:5 and 6 says, Trust in the Lord with your whole heart and lean not until your own understanding, and in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. And I believe God really gives us the insight on things that we can do that we haven't done that will help us to grow and to level up. David has a question. David Darnell, what daily habits helped you grow the fastest? There's a few things that have helped me grow the fastest, and I have to give all honor and glory to God who has helped me. I believe prayer on a daily basis, reading the word on a daily basis, having different books that I'm reading, having coaches have helped me. But really, the biggest thing has been, prayer and my relationship with God. Um, God has given me insight on things that I had not even thought of. I can think about past positions that I've had, um, things that when I went to bed the night before, I didn't know the answer to, and I woke up with an idea, and I believe that was divine. God gave me ideas to have solutions. There have been times that there have been people who he's put in my life to talk to. So the daily habits have been prayer. It's been, reading the word. It's been finding articles and books to read. There are some days that there aren't any other books other than the Bible that I read. There's some days that I read articles. There's some days that I watch YouTube videos that help with my personal, professional, and spiritual development. So those are some daily habits that have helped me to grow, and then finding ways, putting down things that I can do to go towards my overall goals. Now, before I had said that I was going to end the stream, I didn't see the questions. I see the questions there. And so I have answered all of the questions. If there's something that I missed, please forgive me. Charge it to my head and not my heart. And I will be sure to share that. So thank you all for watching. Have an amazing weekend, and blessings to all of you. And thank you for watching today.